Shortly after the release of 36 Chambers in 1993, RZA and the rest of Wu-Tang worked together to release solo projects for every member of the group. Now, although not everyone was able to get a solo release before the next Wu project, Wu-Tang Forever, we still got some pretty dope projects, especially the one that I'm about to talk to y'all about today. Welcome to the Bar for Bar podcast, and for its 25th year anniversary, this week I'm talking to you guys about Liquid Swords, one of my favorite albums of all time. First things first, so we're going to get into why this is my favorite album of all time, or one of my favorite albums. I started to allude to it a little bit in the cold weather episode a few weeks back, but I mean, one of the biggest reasons is because it is a cold weather album. The first time I listened to it was in the winter, and it was around like 30 degrees. I mean, it's the Bay Area, so relax. That's cold for us, but you know, it put me in that cold, and it's weird. So the album itself, like, I was already listening to it when it was cold, but the album itself also adds to that. So it has a loosely structured story, you could say, based on the Shogun's Assassin, which is also where they got a lot of the samples from. They also got samples from Dragon on Fire and Shaolin versus Lama. But basically all those samples, as well as the story itself, really helped to, like, set the tone and the scene for the album. Like, it really puts you in, like, old Japan, and had you feeling like you were in winter and you're just a fly on the wall watching all this stuff happening. So I mean, the first few lines of the project go something like, my father was a Shogun's decapitator, and then like one day the Shogun sent his ninja spies to kill him, but he didn't. Like, it's so weird because, yes, that is directly lifted from the movie, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they got someone to record it and just did it. It's crazy, like, to me, like, how well RZA had incorporated all these samples that most people just wouldn't even acknowledge. Like, people would just kind of watch kung fu movies but never even think to sample them in music. And I think that's like one of the other major things. Both RZA and GZA were able to put in a lot of solid work into this project. Now, what I mean by that is they were able to both have, well, GZA had the dope lyrics, and then RZA had the dope production. And what also adds to that is, this, to me, feels like one of the first Wu-Tang albums that, I mean, I guess, feels more modern, you could say. I mean, that's not to say that the previous projects were bad or they just sounded old, but they kind of do. I'm not gonna lie. Like, going back and listening to 36 Chambers, like, you hear crackles, you hear it kind of hissing. Like, I think the mixing was just a little bit different then. So RZA on this project especially, and he did it on Only Built for Cuban Links and Return to the 36 Chambers, but on this one especially, it was really refined, you could say. Like, it's kind of like Dr. Dre. How if you listen to anything produced by Dr. Dre, like from back in the day, it's still gonna sound crisp and nice today, like as if it was just released. And that's what I like about this one a lot too, because he's able to, like, I'm able to go from listening to whatever just dropped to putting on Liquid Swords, and it just sounds like it flows well. Like, it doesn't sound like, oh yeah, this is definitely a 90s album or 90s song. Like, it sounds like it could have been released yesterday. And I think that's a good thing too, because that really reinforces the idea of longevity. Like RZA and GZA really probably had in mind, like, yo, this album is gonna be around forever. Like they want to make something that lasts, and I think they did a good job with that. Because it, like I said, it definitely doesn't sound like an old album by any means. Moving on from that, actually going back to the cold weather part, like it's really weird because every year, right around this time, it's just like a lot of people bring it up. Like if you go on Reddit or any hip hop related page, they'll more than likely bring up Liquid Swords at some point, especially around this time because there's not much to talk about. So we're like, hey, let's talk about this album that everyone likes for the cold weather feels. And I mean, they're not wrong. It is a really good album for the cold. But like I mentioned on the cold weather episode, like it was again more like it felt to me like, well, one, they're setting, putting you in the mindset of being in Japan during all the events of Shogun's assassin. However, it's also bringing you back into New York and Staten Island. Like a lot of the sounds and what GZA's saying on this kind of reminds you where they were. And I think that's another strong point of this album. Like, we obviously get tracks that are like Liquid Swords and Duel of the Iron Mike, where the whole purpose of the track is just to show off. Like, the main focus is the braggadocio. However, we do get a lot of songs as well that have a lot of relevance today, such as Living in the World Today, Cold World, and Labels, for example. Like, those ones have just legitimate relevance to what's happening around people in general in the world today, because they live in the world today. But I think that also adds to GZA and RZA thinking like, yo, we need to have some sort of longevity. I'm not saying that that's actually what they said, but I could definitely see that because, you know, rappers wanna rap. They want their music to, you know, transcend time. Like, I mean, how many people do you know nowadays who are actually going to listen to music that came out back in the day, like, or even a few years ago? Because I know I don't listen to a whole lot of music that dropped like last year or the year before. Like, it has to be something real good for me to stick around and listen to it for this more than that year, or even the first few months that it came out. But I think that also goes into the whole thing that people's attention spans are a lot shorter these days because we have all access to everything on streaming. But that's another discussion for now. Yeah, like getting into tracks like Living in the World Today and Cold World and Labels. Sorry. Living in the World Today is just, it's not beating you over the head with a message. Like, it is a dope ass song, and it's one of the best songs on the album. But the message that you get isn't given to you until the end of the song. Because it sounds like, the chorus, if you're living in the world today, you'll be hearing the slang that the Wu-Tang say. Like, if you are currently living in the world, you are going to be hearing what Wu-Tang's saying. And at that time, Wu-Tang was the shit. I mean, they still shit, but you know, like, you go and listen to Wu-Tang, or if you're not listening to Wu-Tang yourself, you're going to know people that listen to Wu-Tang, and they're going to be talking about stuff that Wu-Tang say. So you're going to hear Wu-Tang one way or another. But the lines that really stick out and like are still 100% relevant today is ring like shots from Glocks that attract cops around clubs, and they try to shut down hip-hop. But we only increased if everything is peace. Father, you see King the police. Which is extremely relevant because like, you can, like, they're not just trying to shut down hip-hop. Like, I think he just said hip-hop here because it works better with the song. But I mean, it could just be very well about any sort of activity that involves black people, because the police was crooked then, the police is still crooked. Anyways, other than that, that song, I mean, it's dope. The other thing I can think of is, like, he's just talking about robbing place and the DJ is a getaway driver. But then with Cold World, he's just kind of talking about stuff in the ghetto. Like, this isn't, like, he's not trying to, like, put it on a pedestal or anything. Like, he's just telling you how, like it is. And we still do get a lot of songs like that. Like, we get songs where they're just straight up rapping from a place that they used to be in. I think this, as well as everything else, was recorded in RZA's basement, so that's him literally there. But anyways, this song is really just focused on, like, street life, which is still very relevant today. Like, that is still a thing. Like, you have people pulling out guns, you have people snatching chains, snatching coats. Well, coats not so much now, but a lot of times chains, jewelry, just they gonna take stuff from you. And then finally, labels. Like, that song is literally just talking about how bad some record labels are. Like, the song came off of them, well, them being Jizza and RZA, coming off of Cold Chillin', which I don't believe exists anymore, and neither does apparently like 80 or so % of these labels that he mentioned. But the biggest problem with that label was that Jizza knew that he was dope, but they kind of shelved him and made him just, you know, kind of redo his album and just, how do you say this? They thought that he wasn't good enough. Let's go with that. But in reality, obviously, like, Jizza is one of those dudes that's, like, he'll out-rap damn near everyone. Like, he is a solid ass MC and lyricist especially. Let's see. He said, I came to Cold Chillin' Records where I was just as lyrically talented as their top artist, and they didn't recognize that. They fucked my album up. This was RZA saying that, but, you know, I mean, he's talking about Jizza's album, Words from the Genius, which technically came out before Wu-Tang, like, was fully formed. So I don't really consider that as a Wu-Tang project, even though they were both involved. Similar to how I don't really always consider Gravediggaz as a Wu project, even though RZA is directly involved. It's just not under that same umbrella to me. Like, it's more like a side project. Just because it doesn't have more Wu-Tang members. This is an unnecessary tangent. Sorry. Anyways, but yeah, he was talking about labels on the song Labels. And he, at first, like, for the longest time, I just thought, I was like, why are you talking about labels? Like, what do you mean labels? Like, I thought he was just talking about, like, food labels, because he does say, if you don't read the label, you might get poisoned. But then whenever I realized it, I was like, oh, he's talking about how shitty labels are and how you gotta actually read your contracts and stuff like that. And, you know, I mean, that's not really something that not something that I don't think people were talking about back then. It just seems like a very more recent problem. I mean, everyone's always said Tommy ain't my motherfucking boy. Like, that's always a thing. Like, no one ever really liked Tommy Boy Records. Oh, right. I forgot that Tommy Boy Records is where RZA first signed and put out We Love You Rakim, or Oh I Love You Rakim. That was a moment for sure. It was definitely an interesting time. Anyways, but like that's what I'm saying. The project can really relate to a lot of the things that people should be aware of now. Like artists now more than ever, I would say, need to actually read their contracts and have someone help them with it, because the record labels are trying to take you for all your money. Like I mentioned on the weekly, even Spotify's about to start doing some bullshit like that. Like, oh, you want money? Or how about exposure? That's what I mean. That's always been a thing too, I guess. Moving on though, this album has a lot of high moments for me. Like, honestly, just the whole way through. The only time that like I notice or remember that I'm listening to this album when I have it on, because I listen to it so often, it's just like normal. But the only time I'm just like, oh right, I'm listening to a Wu-Tang album, is when Hell's Wind staff, Killer Hills comes on, because it's just got such a long skit to it, and I really like it. I really like that skit because it kind of fits the whole Wu Gambino sort of feel that they were going for with Only Built for Cuban Links. Basically just a black mafia of some sort. And that's another thing that just got continued on like throughout a lot of other Wu-Tang projects. It's interesting though because this doesn't seem like something that GZA necessarily would rap about or talk about or really care about, based on the rest of his music, but it still works. And it's also just interesting, like he doesn't even really talk about the drug dealing aspect of it in his lyrics, I don't believe. Sorry, I just have it pulled up, so I'm just doing a quick check. Yeah, I mean, oh yeah, okay, that makes some sense. Because so basically, what's happening is he is talking about his earlier days, but he's making it seem like the drug dealing aspect of this song is more for like, rather than just being like on the streets to like, you know, just the regular person, it's a higher class sort of drug dealing, which makes that whole skit make a lot more sense. So the skit itself is like, again, a black mafioso sort of thing. And they're talking about lots of money. Like they're talking about 20,000, 20 grand, some shit. Like it's a lot. But yeah, it's like high-end drug dealing. And you know, that's not something that people really talked about then. It was more of like, ah yes, these are our drug dealings. We do it on the streets, and you know, that's that. But yeah, there's a lot of songs on here that just to me stick out and can last for 25 years. Clearly, like it is such a it's a fun album to me. Like then you also have albums like Bible at the end, which is really interesting because they're all part of the Nation of Islam, if I'm not mistaken. So like, why do you have a song titled Bible? Well, it's because basic instructions before leaving Earth. Like, you just gotta do all this shit before you leave. Like, it's so good. And like, it's an interesting ending because it's not even a GZA song, it's a Killah Priest song. So like, why is it here? Like, I like it. It's just weird. It's weird to have it here because it, you know, it's not a GZA song, but it's dope still. But yeah, anyways, focusing back in on this project, there's, yeah, like you say original proper ending, which was I Got Your Back. I got your back, so you best to watch your front. But you best to watch your front. That is another song that can really kind of tie into today. Like, you gotta watch your, like, you got homies with you. They gonna watch your back. But you also gotta watch what's in front of you. Like, you can't always rely on the people around you to see what's in front of you. Like, you gotta do that for yourself. Like, whether that's, like, literally just watching out for people in front of you, or trying to watch out for your career and, like, missteps and stuff like that. I forgot how long that chorus was, by the way. But yeah, I mean, this album to me is just, it's a fun listen. It's a quick listen. Like, I don't know, like there's no reason to not listen to this album or not like the album. Well, sure, if you want to be like, oh, I can't relate to it. Alright, bro, like, fine. But when people talk about Wu-Tang albums, like, I feel like this one, for some reason, always gets forgotten. Like, everyone talks about Only Built for Cuban Links. Everyone talks about Iron Man. Obviously, 36 Chambers and Return to 36 Chambers. But for some reason, to me, it feels like this one always gets left behind. And it doesn't really make sense. Because it's one of the best albums. I'm going to say that. And I'm going to keep saying it. Like, as far as Wu-Tang projects go, this is the one that I return to the most. This and what's Supreme Clientele, I believe. Like, those are the two that I return to the most, just because those are the ones that I happen to latch on to. But yeah, like, I think the biggest reasons for me really liking this album is the fact that, one, it sounds like a modern album. Like, that makes it a lot easier for me to just throw on and listen to whenever I want to, because I don't have to put my mindset into, like, the place where I'm like, all right, listen, you're listening to a 90s album. Don't get confused as to why it's so quiet or the levels aren't the same as your normal music. Like, I don't have to remind myself of those things. The other thing is, it's a fun listen. Like, GZA just sounds good on every beat here. And he raps really well. Like, I almost want to do a full breakdown, but everyone has already done that, including GZA himself. So there's no need for me to go down and go track for track, bar for bar, and talk to you guys about each individual track. Like, it's just to me, it's just a fun project. And I don't know, I'm still waiting for that project that he was gonna do with Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, about space and shit. That would have been a fun project. I think it's still in the works, but we'll see. Because, I don't know, GZA just kind of disappears for a while. I actually remember when I saw them live, like, GZA, like, everyone was, like, in the middle of the stage, and then GZA was all the way just on the side, just rapping, like, by himself. Like, he didn't have anyone else next to him. But I think he did that on purpose. It was kind of funny, though. Okay, now I'm just starting to ramble. But yes, I like this album. It's solid. It still holds up today. It sounds like it came out recently. There's a lot of messages here for people, like, in general, but also in the rap game. And Kung Fu samples are fun. I mean, like, the samples, to me, I feel really makes it what I have to call a cold weather album. Like, cool, you have the lyrics that kind of put you into that sort of mindset. Like, oh, cool, I'm in New York. I'm just bumping this. I'm like, this is just stuff happening around me. But having it set with the Shogun's Assassin really also adds to that, because you're like, oh yes, I'm in old Japan. Everything just feels cold. Is it snowing? Maybe. But yeah, I enjoyed this project. If you were around when it came out, let me know what was happening then, because I honestly am very curious. Because obviously I did not listen to it when it first came out, because I would have been 2. I mean, I know Wu-Tang is for the children, but I don't know that I would have listened to it when I was 2. So, those of you who were older than 2, who listened to it at that time, let me know what you thought of it when it first came out. And what sort of feedback came out of it, because it's not quite like the other Wu projects, I would say. Like, I mean, it has a lot of the same aspects, but to me, I feel like Jizz is the genius. You know, he has more. I don't want to say he has more depth, but it just feels like he does. But regardless, let me know what y'all thought of the album when it first came out, because I am very curious. Also, let me know in the comments below what your favorite Wu-Tang project is, and I don't know, like where you would rank their solo projects. Let's go with that. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more ramblings about my favorite albums, I guess, and more podcasts in general. But yeah, thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.